Hello everyone, and welcome to Marriage is Not the End. Today's story might make you do one of two things. Halfway through, you may feel the urge to walk into the kitchen and make your partner a warm cup of tea. Or later tonight, lying in bed in the quiet of the dark, you might find yourself asking a difficult question. What exactly are we holding on to when we insist on staying in a marriage? Today's story comes from a listener submission. For the sake of telling it, we'll call her Emily. Emily's story takes place in Los Angeles, inside a single-family house worth $2.8 million. But this story isn't about luxury. It's about something far more frightening than poverty, ***, a slow, emotional torture that wears a person down piece by piece. It was Christmas Eve. The entire neighborhood was wrapped in holiday warmth. Soft yellow light glowed from every window. Faint laughter and Christmas carols drifted through the cold evening air. Emily's house had a 7-foot Christmas tree she had decorated herself, ornaments, tiny string lights, and Tom's favorite popcorn garland. The dining table was filled with the Christmas dinner she had spent the entire day preparing, a golden, glistening roasted turkey with cranberry sauce, bacon-wrapped mini sausages, soft roasted potatoes and carrots, and the creamy spinach escargot casserole her mother-in-law used to make best, something that had somehow become Emily's responsibility every Christmas. Emily stood beside the table and pressed the back of her hand against her aching stomach. Her stomach problems weren't new. Whenever stress built up, the pain came back to torment her. Just the day before, she had been curled up on the couch, her face pale as paper. Her husband Jack had barely looked up from his phone. "What's wrong now?" "Being dramatic again," he said. Then he grabbed his car keys and left to pick up his sister Jessica from the airport after her vacation in Miami. No one asked if Emily should go to the hospital. Just like no one had asked in the past 10 years whether she was tired or happy. The doorbell rang. It wasn't a guest. It was her father-in-law, Thomas, coming home. Thomas pushed the door open, bringing the cold night air in with him. He removed his expensive cashmere coat, but his face looked darker than the winter sky outside. His eyes swept across the carefully arranged dinner table, across his smiling wife Martha, across his beloved daughter Jessica, who had just come downstairs still scrolling through her phone. And finally, like a nail hammered into place, his gaze stopped on Emily. There wasn't a trace of warmth in that look. Only undisguised disgust. As if Emily weren't his daughter-in-law at all, but a piece of trash in this beautiful house that should have been thrown out long ago. The air in the dining room froze. Martha was the type who could read the room instantly. She set down her wine glass and spoke cautiously. "Thomas, you know Emily's been busy all day, and she's not feeling well." Maybe she didn't finish the sentence. But everyone understood what she meant. It wasn't concern. It was a reminder that Emily was pretending to be sick again, ruining the holiday mood. "Yeah, Dad," Jessica chimed in, lifting her head. Her glossy lips curled as her sharp voice cut through the room like a knife scraping glass. "Didn't she say yesterday her stomach hurt? It's Christmas, don't ruin the vibe." Each word landed like a poisoned needle, stabbing exactly where Emily hurt the most. Emily lowered her eyes and looked at her hands that had grown rough from years of housework. The pain in her stomach twisted even harder. Then, bang. Thomas slammed his hand on the table so hard the wine in the glasses sloshed over. In 2 strides he stormed up to Emily and shoved her violently to the side. She wasn't prepared. The force sent her stumbling backward several steps. Her lower back crashed into the sharp corner of the buffet cabinet. A bolt of pain shot through her body, nearly knocking her off her feet. Her vision went dark for a moment. The dining room that had just been full of holiday cheer fell into dead silence. Everyone stared at her. Martha, with cold indifference. Jessica, with poorly hidden delight. And Jack, her husband, with something like fear and avoidance. Thomas pointed his finger so close it nearly touched Emily's nose. His voice squeezed through clenched teeth, filled with years of resentment and absolute authority. "Bad luck, woman. A curse on this family. Look at you, always sick and useless. And you still expect to sit down and eat with us? Our family must have been cursed for 8 generations to end up with someone like you. Get out. Go back to your parents' house. Stop being an eyesore here." Every word landed like a hammer smashing into Emily's heart. For 10 years, since the very first day she married into this family, she had heard words like these again and again. Because her first child was a daughter and not the son they wanted to carry on the family name. Because when Jack's business failed, her parents couldn't give money to fill the financial hole. Because even after she gave birth to their son, she didn't quickly have another baby to make the perfect pair of boy and girl. Every disappointment somehow became her fault. She was the original sin. Instinctively, Emily looked toward Jack, her husband. Jack sat across the table clutching his napkin tightly, his knuckles pale. His face was white. His lips moved slightly. But when Thomas shot him a cold glance, Jack swallowed every word he might have said. He lowered his head, shrinking into himself like a child too afraid to admit he'd done something wrong. In that moment, Emily clearly heard something inside her break. It wasn't heartbreak. Heartbreak still hurts. This was worse. A cold, empty silence. Like the final match burning out in the dark, leaving nothing but freezing emptiness behind. Their 8-year-old son, Tom, was standing behind Emily. He had just washed his hands and was about to sit down for dinner. The scene terrified him. His eyes were red as he clutched his mother's shirt tightly, his small body trembling. He looked at his father with confusion and fear, unable to understand why Grandpa was bullying Mom and why Dad said nothing. Emily's body stood stiff as stone. Her face showed nothing. No anger. No sadness. Not even a ripple. She looked at the table meant to represent family reunion. At Thomas's cruel face. At Martha's detached indifference. At Jessica's smug smile. And at Jack's silence, so cowardly it made her nauseous. The final flicker of warmth and hope in Emily's heart was extinguished. Turned to ashes. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't even look at Jack again. Slowly, stiffly, inch by inch, she turned around. She gently pried her son's little hand from her shirt and forced a smile that looked worse than tears. Then she walked straight out of the dining room. Out of that glittering house that felt more like a prison. Her back looked so thin and fragile that it seemed the winter wind might blow her away. She didn't go upstairs. At the front entrance she grabbed her coat and purse, quietly opened the door, and stepped outside. From nearby houses came the sounds of laughter and Christmas music. Fireworks flickered faintly in the night sky. And Emily walked into the cold, lonely darkness. Goodbye, Thomas family. The winter night in Los Angeles cut across her face like knives. Emily wandered down the empty streets without direction. The city lights of Christmas Eve sparkled everywhere, but none of that light reached her heart. Her phone lay silent in her purse. No calls. No messages. It was as if her disappearance meant nothing to the family she once called home. She checked into a 24-hour motel using cash and rented the cheapest single room. The room was tiny and bare, filled with the harsh smell of disinfectant. She threw herself onto the stiff bed and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. All night long, she couldn't sleep. 10 years of marriage played in her mind like a faded old film, frame by frame. She remembered that she hadn't always been like this. Once, she had been a well-known interior designer in Los Angeles. She owned her own studio and had dreams for the future. One of the cafes she designed had even been featured in the lifestyle section of the Los Angeles Times. When she married Jack, she thought she had married for love. He seemed gentle and attentive, the kind of man who whispered sweet words and surprised her with little gifts. For the sake of the family, and for their son, she gave up everything. She closed her studio and handed all her client contacts over to a friend. She took on every household chore and kept the house running perfectly. She endured Thomas's almost obsessive need for control and constant criticism, complaints that she spent too much money, that she wasn't lucky for her husband, that her body had changed after giving birth. She endured Martha's snobbery and constant nitpicking. Martha would gossip with neighbors behind Emily's back, complaining that Emily came from a family that only ran a small restaurant, far beneath the Thomas family. She endured Jessica's selfishness and endless demands. Jessica treated her like a free stylist and ATM. If she liked one of Emily's cosmetics or handbags, she would simply take it without even asking. And her husband, Jack? Whenever Emily tearfully tried to confide in him, his answer was always the same. My dad's just like that. Just ignore him. My mom means well. Try to be more understanding. Jessica's still young and immature. As her sister-in-law, you should let it go. Emily, family harmony is everything. For me, just put up with it. Each act of patience brought her no respect, no understanding, only worse bullying and deeper contempt. She once believed her sacrifices would build a warm home. In the end, she realized she had been nothing more than a high-end housekeeper they didn't have to pay, someone they could insult and abuse whenever they pleased. At 3 a.m, her phone screen suddenly lit up. It was the house landline. Mom, her son's voice trembled with suppressed sobs. Where are you? Did you leave me? Grandpa was really scary. Dad didn't say anything. I'm so scared. Every sob from her son struck her heart like a hammer. His name was Tom. He was her only weakness, the one reason she hadn't given up completely during this suffocating marriage. Sweetheart, it's okay. Mommy didn't leave you, she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Mom just needed some fresh air. I would never leave you. After hanging up, the tears she had held back finally burst free. She didn't cry aloud. She simply let the tears slide silently down her face, soaking the musty motel pillow. Crying was for the powerless. It solved nothing. She realized that this so-called home had rotted all the way down to its roots. It wasn't just consuming her, it was poisoning her son as well. She couldn't let Tom grow up in a house filled with verbal abuse, a cowardly father, and cold, loveless relationships. She had to take him away. They had to escape. A bold, almost crazy, plan quickly formed in her mind. At dawn, Christmas Day, she didn't return home. Instead, she drove straight to a bank downtown, and then to a highly recommended law firm she had researched online beforehand. On the surface, the Thomas family lived in a multi-million-dollar home, drove Porsches, and carried themselves with the pride of Thomas's former government position. But Emily knew the truth. It was all an illusion. Jack's renovation company had been failing for years. It was basically an empty shell kept alive by juggling debts. Jessica spent money recklessly and could never keep up with her credit card bills. And the house. Using the savings she had quietly accumulated over the years, and with help from her lawyer, Emily began secretly investigating the true ownership and financial status of the house. When they had bought it, the Thomas family paid most of the down payment. But Emily had also invested all of her savings, the money she got from selling her studio. The title listed both Jack and Emily as co-owners. Soon, she discovered something shocking. 3 years earlier, the $2.8 million house had been mortgaged for an $800,000 loan. And the signatures on the mortgage documents included Jack's and hers. Her mind buzzed as a memory suddenly surfaced. 3 years earlier, Jack had brought home a stack of documents. He told her the company needed temporary funding and asked her to sign what he described as a routine joint loan between spouses. At the time, she was busy trying to lower Tom's fever with cold compresses. She hadn't thought much about it. She hadn't even read the documents carefully before signing. Now she understood. They had been planning this all along. Using her name to take out the loan. Using their house as collateral. If the company collapsed, the enormous debt would fall on her as well. Thomas. Jack. You really planned this well. Emily gripped the copy of the mortgage contract in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly from the pressure. But she felt no anger. Only a cold, quiet calm. They had handed her the sharpest weapon themselves. She immediately asked the lawyer how she could legally liquidate the house as quickly as possible while protecting her and her son's rights. Ms. Emily, the lawyer, a woman in her 40s, said briskly, under California law, this property is considered marital property. But since it's mortgaged, the loan must be paid off before the house can be sold. Also, because both your names are on the title, selling the property generally requires authorization and signatures from both of you. Emily nodded. She had expected that. Next, she called her mother, Susan, who lived in Oregon. The moment she heard her mother's gentle voice, Emily's composure finally collapsed. Calmly, she told her everything that had happened on Christmas Eve, and the decision she had made. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then her mother spoke with absolute firmness. Emily, divorce him. You must divorce him. If you don't have enough money, I do. Don't be afraid of anything. I'll always stand behind you. Tell me how much you need. I'll transfer it right now. Not long after the call ended, a large sum of money arrived in Emily's account. It was her mother's lifetime pension savings, the last of the money left from the small farm her grandfather had passed down. Emily wiped her tears away and began drafting a precise escape plan. Step 1. Pay off the mortgage and reclaim full ownership of the house. Step 2. Find a reliable real estate agent and sell the house as quickly as possible. Step 3. Use the Thomas family's carelessness to obtain Jack's authorization signature. Step 4. Take her son and transfer him to a new school. Step 5. Disappear. Like a meticulous engineer, she considered every detail. Each step was calculated with precision. The operation had begun. First, she returned to the house while the entire Thomas family was out visiting relatives. Using a spare key, she quietly entered. She quickly gathered all the important documents, her and Tom's passports, birth certificates, social security cards, along with the valuable jewelry she had brought into the marriage and several antique items her mother had given her. Looking at the house she had spent 10 years building, she felt no attachment at all. She rented a U-Haul truck and secretly moved everything to a small apartment she had already leased online. When she finished, half the walk-in closet was empty, and her son's desk stood bare. She knew the war had begun. For most people, the Christmas holiday was a time to relax and let their guard down. For Emily, it was the perfect moment to act. Using the money from her mother along with her own savings, she went to the bank and paid off the entire $800,000 mortgage immediately, rushing through the paperwork to remove the lien on the house. When the bank clerk informed her that the property title was now fully restored under her and Jack's names, Emily let out a long breath. Step 1, complete. Next, Emily contacted several major real estate agencies in the city. The terms she offered were extremely attractive. The house would be sold for $200,000 below market value, but the buyer had to pay in cash and be able to close within 1 week. Where there's enough money on the table, someone always steps up. Very quickly, a young tech millionaire from Silicon Valley became interested in the property. He was eager to settle down in Los Angeles, and Emily's terms were exactly what he was looking for. Now came the most critical step, getting Jack's signature. That afternoon, Emily called him herself. When he answered, she spoke in a weary voice, softened with just a hint of compromise. Jack, I've thought it over. We should talk. On the other end, Jack was clearly caught off guard. Then his tone shifted, growing almost smug. He must have thought Emily had finally run out of strength, that she was ready to come back and admit defeat. See? This could have all been avoided, he said, adopting the self-important tone of a man who saw himself as head of the household. Where are you? I'll come pick you up. That won't be necessary, Emily cut in. I'm out, and I'm not in a good mood. Weren't we always saying the house should eventually be transferred fully into my name, so I'd have some security? You promised me that before. Does that still stand? This was a promise Jack had made years ago just to pacify her. He would always say that once his business was doing better, he would transfer the house entirely into her name so she could feel secure. Of course, it had never been anything more than an empty promise. But now, that empty promise had become her strongest weapon. Jack fell silent for a moment, probably weighing his options. Naturally, he didn't want to give up half the house. But he was even more afraid that Emily would keep causing trouble, especially that she might talk to other people and damage his image as the good husband in front of relatives and friends. In the end, he convinced himself that Emily was simply asking for reassurance. As long as he soothed her, she would go back to being the same Emily he could always control. Of course it still stands, he said grandly, with the air of someone bestowing a favor. As long as you come home and live properly with me, and stop fighting with my parents, I'll agree to anything. Where are you? I'll bring the paperwork for you to sign. I'm at the Starbucks in West Hollywood, Emily said, giving him the address. Bring the power of attorney too. I don't feel like making multiple trips. I want to authorize the real estate agent to handle all the transfer paperwork. Half an hour later, Jack showed up in his Porsche, looking pleased with himself. He pushed a stack of documents across the table toward her, including a property transfer agreement and a blank general power of attorney form that had already been notarized. Emily, see? I had everything ready a long time ago. I was just waiting for you to say yes. He looked at her with what was supposed to be tenderness, his expression almost theatrical. Sign it, and then we'll go home. Looking at his hypocritical face, Emily felt her stomach churn. She lowered her head, picked up the pen, and quickly signed her name everywhere she needed to. Then she slid the blank power of attorney form back toward him. Your turn. Jack didn't suspect a thing. With a bold flourish, he signed his name and added his thumbprint. He thought he was signing a heartfelt promise to transfer the house to her. What he didn't know was that he was really signing his own eviction order. The moment Emily got his signature, she stood up and looked at him coldly. Jack, thank you for your cooperation. With that, she picked up the documents, turned around, and walked away without looking back. Jack remained frozen in place, apparently unable to understand why she had suddenly become so distant. The very next day, Emily met the buyer at the title company and notary office with her lawyer and all the legally valid documents. With breathtaking speed, they completed the transfer of ownership. When she saw more than $2.6 million from the sale, clean and clear after taxes and the loan payoff, transferred into the private account she had secretly opened, she knew she was free. That same day, under the excuse of bringing her son a New Year's gift, she went to Tom's school. Without anyone in the Thomas family suspecting a thing, she completed the withdrawal paperwork and took him with her. In the car, she looked into her son's clear but slightly uneasy eyes and said seriously, Tom, Mommy is going to take you somewhere new, where we can start our own life. Do you want that? Tom's expression shifted from confusion, to understanding, and finally to absolute determination. He nodded hard. Wherever you go, Mom, I'll go too. Before leaving the city, she took him back to the house one last time, a house that no longer belonged to them. She asked Tom to write a note in his own handwriting and leave it on the coffee table in the living room. It had only 2 words, goodbye. Emily looked around this home, the place she had poured 10 years of youth and effort into. The furniture she had personally chosen. The decorations she had arranged with her own hands. Now, all of it looked like a cruel joke. There was no attachment left in her eyes. Only cold resolve. Holding her son's hand, she disappeared into the night and left the city behind for good. She changed her phone number, deleted her social media accounts, and cut off every possible line of contact with the Thomas family. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Less than 24 hours after she and Tom boarded a flight to the East Coast, a certified letter from one of Los Angeles's most prestigious law firms was solemnly delivered to the Thomas family home. On the 4th day of the new year, the Thomas family was still basking in the fading holiday mood. Thomas lounged on the sofa with a glass of whiskey in hand, lecturing Jack. That wife of yours just needs discipline. See? Ignore her for a few days and she falls back in line. Women can't be spoiled. Martha chimed in from the side. Exactly. Emily just has too much free time. After New Year's, make her get a job. Once she's busy, she won't have time to sit around thinking nonsense. Jessica, meanwhile, was glued to her phone, planning which luxury store to hit that afternoon. Then the doorbell rang. A courier delivered a thick EMS envelope, specifically addressed to Thomas himself. He put on his reading glasses and opened the package suspiciously. The moment he saw the large embossed words at the top, legal notice, his face changed instantly. What the hell is this? He muttered as he pulled the documents out. Martha, Jack, and Jessica all crowded around in curiosity. This letter serves as formal notice to Mr. Thomas, Mrs. Martha, Mr. Jack, and Miss Jessica that the villa located on XX Road, currently occupied by the 4 of you, has been lawfully sold to a third party by its legal owners, Ms. Emily and Mr. Jack, through proper authorization on X/X/XXXX. According to the terms of the transaction, the current occupants are required to vacate the property within 3 days of receiving this letter. Failure to do so will entitle the new owner to pursue legal action. Additionally, Ms. Emily has formally retained this law firm to initiate divorce proceedings against Mr. Jack and to seek custody of the couple's son, Tom. The contents of the letter exploded through the Thomas family living room like a thunderbolt. The expressions on all 4 faces shifted in sequence, from confusion to disbelief to complete shock. This can't be real. It has to be fake. Thomas's hands trembled like leaves in the autumn wind, the letter rattling loudly in his grip. That woman Emily, where did she get the nerve? Jack, what's going on? Jessica screamed. She sold the house? Where are we supposed to live? Jack's mind went blank. He grabbed his phone and frantically dialed Emily's number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. The cold mechanical voice shattered the last fragile piece of hope he had. At that moment, Martha noticed the small note sitting on the coffee table. She picked it up with trembling hands. It was written in her grandson's childish handwriting. Goodbye. Just 2 words. But they stabbed into Jack's heart like an ice pick. Suddenly he remembered the afternoon at the cafe, the documents he had signed, the transfer agreement and the power of attorney. She tricked me. That woman tricked me. Jack roared, slamming his fist onto the coffee table. Thomas shot to his feet, his face dark with rage. Let's go. To the property office. I'll check it myself. There's no way she could sell that house without my approval. The whole family rushed out of the house in a frenzy and drove to the county property registration center. But the answer they received was cold and absolute. Sir, all the documents for this transaction were legally valid, the clerk explained calmly. Both owners either appeared in person or submitted notarized power of attorney documents with full legal authority. We have no grounds to intervene. They stood helplessly in the lobby when Jack's phone suddenly rang. It was the bank. Mr. Jack? We'd like to remind you that the commercial loan for your company has been overdue for 3 months. If payment is not made immediately, we will begin legal proceedings to freeze and auction your assets. Then another call came. And another. Debt collectors seemed to be calling one after another. With the villa sold, the Thomas family's fragile cash flow collapsed overnight. Jack's company, already riddled with financial holes, finally burst open like an infected wound. Thomas went from furious shouting to trembling uncontrollably, and finally collapsed onto the cold tile floor with a heavy thud. The dignity and respectability he had spent his entire life building had just been shattered by the daughter-in-law he had always looked down on. He was still cursing Emily as a vicious woman and a poisonous snake, but now there was unmistakable fear in his voice. Martha completely broke down. Sitting beside him, she beat her chest and wailed. That cruel Emily. How could you be so heartless? What did the Thomas family ever do to you? Our house is gone, and my grandson is gone too. Jessica was hysterical. She grabbed Jack's arm and shook it desperately. Jack, what are we going to do? We don't even have a place to live. My bags. My clothes. They're still in the house. Jack stood there in a daze. Scenes from the past 10 years replayed uncontrollably in his mind. Emily, unable to eat during pregnancy because of morning sickness, being scolded by Thomas for being dramatic, the hurt in her eyes. Emily staying up for nights to design proposals for his company, only for him to take all the credit, the lonely look on her back as she walked away. And that Christmas Eve, when his father shoved her to the ground and he said nothing. Those eyes she had that night. Empty. Completely lifeless. For the first time in his life, a crushing wave of regret hit him with terrifying clarity. What had he lost? Not just a wife. Not just a son. Not just a house. He had lost his family. He had lost the one person who had truly loved him and given everything for him. Someone he had pushed away with his own hands. That night, the Thomas family returned to the villa in a state of shock. When they opened the door, the house that once echoed with noise and conversation now felt suffocatingly silent. And then they noticed something terrifying. It wasn't just Emily and Tom's clothes that were gone. Every single one of Emily's personal belongings, her books, her design drafts, even all of Tom's toys and books from childhood, had disappeared. Every trace of Emily and her son had been wiped clean, as if they had never lived there at all. The following days were a nightmare for the Thomas family. They split up and began desperately searching for Emily and Tom. Jack went everywhere he could think of, her friends, her former colleagues, even her parents' home in Oregon. No one knew where she was. Thomas tried to use his old connections, contacts that had long since faded, to hire private investigators. He even considered publishing a missing person notice in local tabloids to stir up publicity and force her to appear. But every attempt stopped cold when Emily's lawyer sent a formal warning letter. The message was crystal clear. Emily's whereabouts were legally protected. Any attempt to harass or track her through illegal means would constitute an invasion of privacy, and legal action would follow. Only then did Thomas realize something chilling. Emily hadn't acted out of impulse. She had planned everything. And she had prepared for every possible move they might make. They couldn't find her. They were about to be evicted from the house. And Jack's company was drowning in debt. Jack finally collapsed under the pressure. He drank day and night. During the day he was cornered by creditors at his office. At night he returned home to face his parents' blame and his sister's hysterics. Suppliers and business partners who once flattered him now avoided him completely, their eyes filled with contempt and thinly disguised satisfaction. Martha's resentment slowly shifted from Emily to her husband. "This is all your fault, Thomas," she shouted during a bitter argument. "If you hadn't been so cruel to her back then, would Emily have left? Now look. The house is gone. Our grandson is gone. Are you happy now?" It was the first major fight the couple had ever had in decades of marriage. Thomas had spent his entire life basking in admiration and feeding his vanity. He could not handle this humiliation. Night after night he lay awake. His hair turned gray at a visible pace, and he aged rapidly. His once commanding presence faded, leaving only dull, clouded eyes. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away on the East Coast, Emily and Tom had already begun a new life. Using the money from the house sale, she rented a bright 3-bedroom apartment in a beautiful downtown building. She bought herself a used Lexus and, through old connections, registered a new interior design studio. Returning to her career gave her back a sense of purpose and excitement for life. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the living room. Tom sat on the rug, focused on building a Lego set. The carefree smile that had disappeared for so long had finally returned to his face. One day he drew her a picture. In it, he and his mother were walking hand in hand along a beach, with blue skies and seagulls flying overhead. Next to the drawing he wrote, in his childish handwriting, "My new home with Mom." Emily carefully placed the drawing on the refrigerator. Her heart softened. For that smile alone, everything she had done was worth it. Of course, the Thomas family had not completely stopped looking for her. Once, while she was shopping with Tom at a mall, she caught sight of a familiar face out of the corner of her eye, one of Jessica's friends. Alarm bells rang in her head. She calmly took Tom's hand and quietly slipped out through another exit, disappearing into the crowd. She knew they wouldn't give up easily. Soon after, her lawyer contacted the Thomas family again. The divorce court date had been officially scheduled. The lawyer also conveyed Emily's demands. She would seek full custody of Tom, and she would also pursue compensation for the emotional harm she had endured over the past 10 years. Furthermore, the lawyer issued a stern warning. If they attempted to harass her or her son again through any channel, she would file for a restraining order. That phone call was the final straw for the Thomas family. Only then did they truly understand Emily had completely severed ties with them, and there was no way back. They had fallen into complete despair. They had lost the house, the cash flow, the illusion of prestige, and they had also lost the daughter-in-law they had once looked down on, a woman they now realized they could never get back. Along with her, they had lost their only grandson. Inside the empty villa, soon to be forcibly vacated, there was nothing left but endless regret and suffocating silence. For the first time, they began to understand the kind of bone-deep loneliness Emily had endured day after day. In the depths of despair, Jack unexpectedly grew calmer. Alcohol couldn't numb the pain that tore through him in the middle of the night. Again and again, he began to reflect on everything. He remembered when he first met Emily, the light in her eyes, the way she dreamed about the future. He remembered how she turned down an offer from a top design firm in New York just to follow him back to Los Angeles. He remembered how she vomited endlessly during pregnancy while he stayed out all night at business dinners. He remembered the night their son had a high fever. Emily stood in line at the hospital alone holding the child. When she called him, he impatiently said, "I'm in a meeting." He remembered every time his parents humiliated her and she asked him for help, how he avoided her gaze and said nothing. It wasn't Emily who had changed. It was him. He had slowly extinguished the light in her eyes himself. He had been the executioner, carving their love apart piece by piece. The collapse of his career came faster than he imagined. His company declared bankruptcy. He was left personally responsible for millions in debt. The bank repossessed his car. His credit cards were frozen. Overnight, he went from a respectable business owner to a disgraced debtor everyone despised. For the first time in his life, he tasted what it felt like to have nothing, to be stepped on by others. Meanwhile, Thomas and Martha poured all their anger onto him. "You useless idiot. You couldn't even keep your own wife and child. You've completely disgraced the Thomas family." Their accusations cut into his already shattered pride like knives. He had to find her. Not to win her back, he knew he didn't deserve that. He just wanted to say "I'm sorry." He began searching everywhere like a headless fly. He contacted every possible lead. He even created fake accounts to leave desperate messages under her old social media posts, but those accounts had long gone silent. Just when he was about to give up, he accidentally heard a clue from one of Emily's former college classmates. The professor Emily had admired most in university was now teaching at a university in an East Coast city. It was the only lead he had. His last straw. Jack made a decision. He sold everything of value he still owned, scraped together some travel money, packed a worn backpack, and boarded a train heading east. He would go to that unfamiliar city and find her. Even if he could only see her once. That would be enough. Through her lawyer, Emily was fully aware of Jack's movements. She felt no emotion about it. She simply had her lawyer tell him not to waste his effort. But she didn't deliberately hide. She wanted to see just how far the man who had disappointed her for 10 years would go. Tom had also learned bits and pieces about his father searching for them. He didn't comment on it. But when Emily read him bedtime stories at night, he would quietly hug her arm and whisper, "Mom, as long as you're with me, that's enough." Children's hearts are like mirrors. They know very well who truly loves them, and who only treats them like tools. Life in the unfamiliar city was extremely difficult for Jack. He couldn't afford hotels. Instead, he rented a cheap basement room in a rundown Chinese hostel in Queens. To survive, he washed dishes in the back kitchen of a Chinese restaurant in Flushing and took day labor jobs at construction sites. During the day, he wandered like a ghost from university to design firm, holding an old photograph of Emily and asking again and again, "Excuse me, have you seen this woman?" He endured countless cold looks. He tasted the bitterness of life. Finally, he gathered the courage to call Emily's mother, Susan. His voice was hoarse, trembling with suppressed tears. "Aunt Susan, please, just let me see Emily once." "I know I was wrong." Susan's voice was calm, but firm beyond argument. "Jack, Emily was married to you for 10 years. You know exactly how many tears she shed and how much humiliation she endured. When you were successful and enjoying your life, did you ever care about how she felt? When your father drove her out of the house, did you care whether she lived or died? And now that you have nothing, now you remember her? It's too late. You lost that right a long time ago." Then she hung up. That call shattered Jack's final illusion. Standing on a crowded street corner, he crouched down and cried like a child abandoned by the world. Fate can be cruelly ironic. One weekend afternoon, Emily took Tom to a seaside park to fly a kite. The sunlight was perfect, and a gentle ocean breeze moved across the grass. Tom ran across the lawn holding the kite string, his clear laughter ringing through the air. Emily sat on a bench watching him, smiling peacefully. Her heart felt calm. Then suddenly, a hoarse, trembling voice sounded behind her. Emily? Her body stiffened. Slowly, she turned around. It was Jack. He stood a short distance away, thin almost to the point of being unrecognizable. His beard was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. He wore a faded t-shirt covered with dust. He looked nothing like the polished man she once knew. He rushed toward her, his voice shaking uncontrollably. Emily. Tom. I finally found you. The moment Tom saw him, the smile vanished from his face. Instinctively, he ran behind Emily and clutched her hand. His small body trembled slightly. There was something unfamiliar in his eyes. And a trace of fear. Emily placed Tom protectively behind her and looked at Jack calmly. Her gaze was like a frozen winter lake, thick ice, without a ripple. Then, thud. Jack dropped to his knees in front of her. A man in his 30s knelt in the middle of a park, crying uncontrollably in front of passing strangers. Emily, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me. I was horrible. I'm not even human. These past few months I've thought about you and Tom every day. I'm going crazy. Please give me one more chance. Let's go home. Let's start over. His cries drew attention from people nearby. Some whispered among themselves. That guy's pitiful, kneeling and begging his wife for forgiveness. That woman seems so cold. The kid's already this big, can't they just talk it out? Emily heard the murmurs. But she felt nothing. Other people's opinions meant nothing to her. She cut him off coldly. Jack, save your cheap tears. Her voice wasn't loud. But it was sharp. And icy. You only realize you were wrong now? 10 years ago I married you with a full heart, believing I had found someone I could rely on for life. What were you doing then? You said work was busy and I should be understanding. I carried your child, ran the entire household alone, and was treated like a servant by your parents. Where were you? You told me family harmony mattered and I should endure. And that Christmas Eve, when your father called me a curse and shoved me to the ground, where were you? You sat there like a piece of wood, too scared to say a single word. And now that you've lost everything, you come asking for forgiveness? Why should I? Every word she spoke was like a blade, striking directly into his heart. Jack was completely shattered by what she said. He covered his face in agony, his shoulders shaking violently, too ashamed to even look up. Tom tugged gently at her sleeve. Mom, let's go. I don't want to see him. Emily nodded. She didn't spare Jack another glance as he knelt there crying uncontrollably. Holding her son's hand, she turned and walked away without looking back. The only thing she left him was the sight of her back, firm, resolute, and never again willing to stop for him. Behind her came Jack's desperate, hoarse sobbing, mixed with the murmurs of the crowd. Later she learned that someone nearby had recorded the entire scene and uploaded it online. The video quickly went viral. Its headline was blunt, cheating husband gets his karma, kneels in park begging wife to take him back. Soon, internet users dug up every ugly detail about the Thomas family. In no time, they became the internet's textbook example of a toxic in-law family and a cowardly husband. The storm of public opinion became the final straw for Thomas. Already weakened by the constant blows of recent months, he saw the video of his son kneeling and the comments mocking him online. His blood pressure spiked. He suffered a stroke. Doctors diagnosed him with a severe stroke complicated by major depression. His condition was not optimistic. The Thomas family fell into total chaos. Instead of focusing on caring for him, Martha and Jessica immediately began thinking about how to emotionally manipulate Emily. Through her lawyer, they passed along a message. Thomas was critically ill and hoped Emily would remember old family ties and bring Tom back to see him one last time. They naively believed this might be their last chance to turn things around. If she softened and returned, maybe everything could still be saved. When Emily heard the message through her lawyer, she felt nothing. Karma? Perhaps. She simply replied with 8 words. His actions brought this upon himself. It has nothing to do with me. When Jack learned of his father's condition, he rushed to Emily's apartment again. This time he didn't kneel. He didn't cry. His eyes were red, and his voice carried a quiet, desperate plea. Emily, I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything. But my dad, he's not going to make it. Please. Just take pity on me and come see him once. If you do, I'll give up everything. The house is gone, the money's yours, I won't take a penny. I'll sign the divorce papers, I'll walk away with nothing. I just want you to see him once. He believed he was offering a sincere deal. Walk away with nothing? Emily looked at his exhausted face and suddenly felt a faint sense of irony. Jack, she said calmly, the things you're offering now are things I once wanted. At that time, they meant security. They meant love. She paused before finishing her sentence. But now, they're worthless to me. I'm not a tool you can toss aside when you're happy and pick up when you need something. And I won't go back to be anyone's salvation, to rescue a family that rotted long ago. From the day I left, I've lived only for myself and my son. Tom walked out of the room and stood beside her. Looking at Jack, he spoke with a calmness far beyond his years. Dad, you didn't protect Mom before. Now Mom and I have our own life. We're doing really well. A child's words can cut deeper than anything. Jack froze. He looked at the two of them, mother and son, and the last light in his eyes slowly faded. He knew. He had truly lost. Meanwhile, Emily's design studio was thriving. Several outstanding projects had brought her recognition in the industry. Her business kept growing. She met new friends, entered new professional circles, and built a life filled with purpose and light. Her mother, Susan, moved from Oregon to help take care of Tom. Seeing her daughter radiant again and her grandson happy and healthy filled her with joy every day. This was the home Emily had always wanted. A place built on love, respect, and warmth. The Thomas family's decline, meanwhile, was complete. After his stroke, Thomas was left partially paralyzed. His speech became slurred, and he required daily care. Medical bills piled up endlessly. Jessica, the once spoiled princess of the family, lost her financial support. Her lifestyle collapsed overnight. Several of her luxury bags had been purchased on installment plans. Debt collectors came to the door demanding payment, creating humiliating scenes. The friends who once surrounded her vanished. Her job quietly forced her out because of the family's public scandal. Falling from privilege into misery was worse than death for her. As for Jack, after enduring every stage of despair, he finally accepted reality. A few days later, he appeared before Emily one last time. He looked calmer and older. Emily, I came to say goodbye, he said hoarsely. My dad, with his condition, my mom and Jessica can't handle it. I'm going back to Los Angeles. I'll find some small job and take care of them. He looked at her with endless regret and sadness. I know I'll never earn your forgiveness in this lifetime. I just hope you and Tom live well. Emily looked at him. This man she had once loved. And once hated. Now she felt only calm. No mockery. No sympathy. Jack, she said quietly, I wish you well. From today onward, our lives will never cross again. A few days later she received the signed divorce papers. His handwriting was shaky, as if the last of his strength had gone into signing it. At last, the marriage that had been empty for so long was officially over. She told Tom that she and Jack were now separated. He nodded, not fully understanding. Then he hugged her neck and kissed her cheek. Mom, I love you. At that moment, Emily felt as if she possessed the entire world. The story of the Thomas family was finally closed in her life. Using money she had earned herself, she bought a spacious apartment near Central Park, one she designed personally. The first morning sunlight filled the living room, illuminating the laughter on her and Tom's faces. And she knew. A new chapter, one filled with hope, had begun. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Emily's interior design firm became a well-known brand in the industry. She won several international design awards, and her work appeared in top home design magazines. She was no longer someone defined as Jack's wife. She was Emily Chen, an independent, confident, successful woman. Tom grew from a sensitive, timid child into a bright and confident young man. He was accepted into one of the best universities in the country, studying architecture, the field he loved. He inherited his mother's design talent and even surpassed her in some ways. Their relationship had grown into something closer to friendship, open, supportive, and deeply connected. As for the Thomas family, Thomas struggled for several years after his stroke before finally passing away, filled with regret and resentment. Martha spent her later years in loneliness, surviving on a small pension and occasional help from relatives, complaining endlessly about fate. Jessica eventually married a divorced middle-aged man with children. Her marriage was messy and unhappy, and the arrogance she once carried was long gone. And Jack? He never remarried. He spent the rest of his life struggling at the bottom of society. Once, he happened to see Emily on a financial news channel while a television played in a small restaurant. On the screen, she wore a sharp professional suit, her makeup elegant, her demeanor confident and calm. There was a glow in her eyes she probably didn't even realize she had. Standing beside her was Tom, tall, handsome, looking at his mother with pride and love. They say that day Jack sat in the restaurant and cried like a fool while watching the screen. Years later, Emily returned to Los Angeles with Tom. They drove past the old villa where they once lived. It had been beautifully renovated by its new owners, the yard filled with blooming roses. The past felt like a distant dream. She visited her mother Susan, who was healthy and lively, dancing in the park with friends. When she saw Emily and Tom, she smiled endlessly. That evening, Emily and Tom walked back to their hotel together. The night breeze carried the familiar scent of the city. "Mom," Tom asked suddenly, "do you ever regret it?" Emily shook her head and smiled. "No. In fact, I'm grateful for what happened. Because it taught me something important. True happiness isn't about relying on someone else. And it's not about revenge either. True happiness is having the freedom to choose. It's having the strength to walk out of the darkness, with you, and create our own bright future." She looked at her son beside her. He was already half a head taller than she was, smiling down at her. The streetlights stretched their shadows long across the pavement. And she knew, their future was full of light. That's the end of today's story. This is Marriage is Not the End. If you have a story you'd like to share, or thoughts about today's episode, feel free to leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. And to anyone who feels lost in marriage, may you one day find your own path toward the light. Good night.